What's going on, everybody? It's Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast. This is odds.com, and this is the Die Hard MMA podcast for UFC 260. Do me a favor, click the link, check it out. Me and my boy James Lynch break down the entire card from a betting perspective. Good luck on all your betting action this week, and we appreciate you for showing us some love and support. Have a good one.
All right, we've got a welterweight co-main event, and one that I find extremely intriguing here, James. We've got Tyron, the chosen one, Woodley, making his, I would call it a glorious return, but it's anything but lately with this guy. 19-6-1, taking on Vicente Luque, who is 19-7-1. To lay it all out here for everybody, Tyron Woodley, this guy just can't find the trigger. He was looking solid as the champion, proved everybody wrong, constantly disrespected. We had value on Tyron Woodley for years, and then he ran into the top three, the new young blood of the division, and he's on a three-fight losing skid. Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns, Colby Covington, and running his mouth the entire time, making us all sick to our stomachs when he can't do anything he talks about doing in the cage. He just doesn't pull the trigger anymore, James. If you look at his last three fights, 34 significant strikes versus Usman, 28 strikes against Gilbert Burns, 34 strikes versus Colby Covington. And all three of those were 25-minute main event fights. You only mustered 34 strikes over 25 minutes. Now, I know that's significant strikes, not total strikes, but that's not a recipe for success. Vicente Luque on the other side of this thing is a hurricane. The man comes forward and does nothing but attack, attack, attack. He mixes it up well, goes legs, goes to the head. He's got a big right hand, nasty leg kicks. He's one of the most durable guys I have ever seen, and he takes one to give one. And there is the key for me, James. I want to throw a stat at you here with Vicente Luque. He's got a 64% takedown defense rating. That is not very good. Usually you want people to be around that 70 mark, and I know we're just ever so slightly under that 70 mark, but anytime you dip below 70% takedown defense, you leave an opening for someone who is a good wrestler, like a Tyron Woodley, being able to peel you to the mat. I've got a huge problem here, James. I swore to everybody on the show, I've made a big statement about not fading Vicente Luque anymore. There's something about this guy. He gets hit so often, eventually that chin is going to crack. And I've been backing power punchers against him, trying to capitalize on the moment when it's just too much and he can't take it anymore. And here we are again. Everyone and their mom is on Vicente Luque because of just how bad Tyron Woodley has looked. His stock could not be lower. But need I remind you, he's lost to the literal cream of the crop. The current champion, the number one contender that took the champion to a 5-round war, the hardest fight he's ever been in. And then Gilbert Burns, who until just recently was the number one contender and kind of sliced his way through the division for a title shot. Those are the only three guys that have been able to top Tyron Woodley. And you know what? They're all excellent wrestlers, James. They have been able to shut Tyron Woodley's grappling down, and that's made it hard for him to play the game he wants to play. Vicente Luque is going to play right into his hand. Vicente Luque is going to run forward into Tyron Woodley's face. Tyron can win this thing by knockout. Tyron can win this thing by decision if he gets a takedown. I think that Tyron Woodley, this spot is primed for Tyron Woodley to get a win. The only problem, James, is he shot? If you rewind 3 years, I'm going to hammer Tyron Woodley in this spot. I will put so much money, it's not okay on Tyron Woodley in this spot. But after watching him his last three fights, I just don't know if he's got it anymore. And that's really the only reason I am having a hard time getting to the window.
If this was 2 fights ago, I might agree with you. The Tyron Woodley, Clint, that you're describing no longer exists. He doesn't exist. In fact, Tyron Woodley's last knockout win was when he won the title over Robbie Lawler back in 2016. I just don't see it happening. I think there's a couple things about this fight. So first off, I did have a chance to speak to Luque before this fight. He's not in Florida training for this fight. He's in Brazil. Part of the reason is he's going to be a dad coming up here right after the fight. So he wanted to be home close to family. So he's been, and I asked him, I said, what's the training been like? He's training with his team back home. They are pushing him. He's still talking to Henry Hooft every day. Still talking to Gilbert Burns. So he is sort of getting the type of training he is, but I would have liked him a little bit more had he been at Sanford MMA where he's getting to train with his typical teammates. However, one thing he did mention is that when Gilbert Burns fought Tyron Woodley, who did he use as a training partner to mimic Tyron Woodley? That was Vicente Luque. So I think that plays a role. Not only that, but Usman, I know when he was doing his camp, Luque was used in that camp as well. So he's very familiar with Tyron Woodley. Woodley doesn't have the same thing. It's not like Woodley trains with anyone that's fought Luque or anything. So I think that's a bit of an advantage for Luque there as well. But I was with you a couple fights ago. I remember breaking down the Gilbert Burns fight and being like, look, it's just like he lost one fight to Usman. I don't think he's there yet. But what happened in that Burns fight was this, and this is what I took as from my perspective, is I think Woodley had a completely different game plan. And I think that all went out the window when Burns connected early on in the fight and he just threw the game plan away. And Woodley has been the nail in every single of one of his last 3 fights. And that if you do that, and Luque's that guy who can do that, he can make you that he can be the hammer, you can be the nail. When that happens, Woodley's a completely different fighter. And this is not even like, this has happened even before Woodley was champion. Do you remember when he fought Rory McDonald? Rory completely took Woodley out of his element. Woodley, this explosive guy who knocks people out. Rory completely outclassed him in that fight. There's fights. The Jake Shields fights is another one where, again, if you can attack Woodley and you can get in his face and take him out of his element, he can definitely, falter a bit. And I think that's going to happen here. Not to mention the fact he's 38. Not to mention the fact I heard he's going through a pretty bad divorce or has been. He kind of needs the money. So I do wonder where his motivation is at this point. I liked when he went to Thailand, and I actually liked his chances when he was supposed to fight Leon Edwards back a little while back, but he can't even go to Thailand now because of the pandemic. So I don't even know where he's training right now. I'm assuming it's with Dean Thomas or wherever. I don't know. I didn't get a chance to talk to him. But either way, I think Luque is got this fight in the bag. Let's also not forget that Luque is the only fighter to knock out Bilal Muhammad in the first round. That's not easy to do with how durable Bilal Muhammad is. So this guy, I feel like in some ways is a little underrated in the weight class. He's got some good wins. He's coming off a nice win over Randy Brown. A little bit more active than Woodley as well. I really like Luque here. I feel very strongly that Luque wins. The thing is, I don't think he finishes Woodley. To me, if a Gilbert Burns and a Colby Covington, Covington did finish him as an injury. If Usman couldn't finish him, if Burns couldn't finish him in 5 rounds, this fight ending inside 3 rounds, I think Luque wins by decision. And you can get that right now for plus 155. I think there's a lot of value there. I don't see Woodley winning this fight because Clint, I just don't think the Tyron Woodley that we saw that fought Darren Till, the one that fought, Stephen Thompson, I don't think that Woodley exists. And outside of one loss that Luque has had to Stephen Thompson recently, he's looked pretty awesome. So I'm taking Vicente Luque, and I feel very strongly he gets it done here on Saturday night.
Okay, James. Okay. I hear you. And, just so everybody knows, I had to say my piece. I don't think I'm actually going to bet Tyron Woodley this weekend. I don't think I'm going to because I do understand that Tyron Woodley doesn't exist anymore. Lynch, he's just like Bigfoot and the big green giant. The Woodley that I'm imagining is a fairy tale at this point. And as much as I wish he were still around for me to make easy money on because he was underrated, I just don't think he's there anymore. If I get even a whiff of the old Tyron, I will take my shot. But I'm gonna be watching his interviews and things like that extremely closely. One of the things I struggle with when it comes to betting, James, is in MMA, spots that look too good to be true usually are. And that's something where I break out my tinfoil cap. I start wondering what I'm missing because if we're all right, and of course the entire world is with us here, that Tyron Woodley is shot, Vicente Luque is the side, and he can't pull the trigger, why is this line not higher? Why is money right now coming in on Tyron Woodley? Why isn't there more love? Vicente Luque should be minus 400, minus 450. This is the spot where I start to struggle because I feel like if Tyron Woodley can find just one more, he's taken a big step down in competition here. I think he's got the opportunity to win, but it's a combination of I can't bet Tyron Woodley and I'm not supposed to fade Vicente Luque that I probably shouldn't make any kind of a bet here. Shout out to my guy. It went away. The chat's moving too fast. Kyung Do Chicken. There are no fairy tale endings in MMA. He's using my own line against me, James. That's exactly what I said when we bet Stipe over Daniel Cormier. There's no such thing as a fairy tale ending in MMA, and that's right. Tyron Woodley probably doesn't come back on Saturday. He probably doesn't get that that illustrious comeback and gets to ride off into the sunset, because in this sport, we just tend not to see it.
Well, and also I think to answer your question about why the people are hammering the Woodley line, I think it's the reason you mentioned is that he's lost to the 3 top contenders. I think a lot of people are looking at that and saying, oh, hold on a second here. This is a spot where we can get him. Luque's not as good, but I think it's a case of Luque being underrated, if anything. I think, yeah, he lost to Thompson, but that's one loss over how many fights, and he's finishing these guys. I don't know. I think Luque's, I think he's just hitting his stride now. And plus, Dad Luque is incoming. We saw Dad Cerrone, maybe there's something that, and the other thing you mentioned is, you talked about this earlier, who's Vicente Luque's manager? He's a dominance guy. Favorable match.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Excellent point, James. The dominance guys do not miss. And John, you got to call out the Jesse Strader call, man. All right. I was betting on a guy who's got a lot of power against a dude that doesn't have a lot of experience. I swung. I missed. I know. This is at least a proven guy. It's a little bit different of a situation. But yes, I get your point. All right. Moving on. We're gonna say Vicente Luque wins this fight. I like the decision lean because, if anything, Tyron Woodley has been extremely difficult to finish. Hasn't been knocked out since Nate Marquardt way back in the day. So I think that decision lean is probably a good one. And I got to shout out my guy Tom Chambers. He gave me the rub there with my my round 3 sprinkles. Maybe that's the way I can live vicariously here. Get Tyron Woodley round 3, Vicente Luque round 3, and then as long as someone goes down right at the end of the fight, I don't care who it is. Maybe that's the way to go, and I can get just a little taste of betting against Vicente Luque because I'm like an addict, man. I need it.